Welcome to AWN's App State football coverage. I'm Jacob Pearsall.
And I'm Bobby Phillips, and we have an intriguing show ahead of you today, including a sneak peek into Coach Dowell Loggins' mindset after a tough loss on Saturday.
Coach Loggins decided to go for a Zoom call instead of the typical press conference today after App State lost 38-22 at Southern Miss. They're now 2-1 on the season, and it was an interesting game. AJ Swan threw 3 picks in this one.
It was really interesting to see that, Jacob. On top of that, we saw Noah Gillen come into the game, the true freshman for App State. He came in, struggled a little bit, and eventually Billy Wiles was the one to finish out the game and close it out for the Mountaineers.
Yep, and J.J. Cole, who was slated to be the backup quarterback, was hurt, so no play from him. However, the defense really struggled as well. It was an interesting game overall for App State, but to tell us more about it, we have Trey Blake, our guest analyst. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Jacob? Bobby? Glad to be here. Glad you brought me on.
I'm doing pretty good, Trey. And, just first question for you, what are your initial thoughts about the game?
The initial thoughts are, it's the second week in a row that we're seeing struggles from the offense. Last week against Lindenwood, it was fumbles. This week it's interceptions. And, Loggins keeps talking that it's a cultural thing. It's a technical thing. But, it's on the coaches to start. But, we kind of got to put the problem on the players first.
And following that up, after some problems like that, the simple stuff that has gone wrong for App State, how do you correct that going forward?
It starts in practice. We were at practice throughout the week, and, they were putting those receivers through drills to catch the ball. A lot of drops, a lot of struggles, but they're working hard in practice, and it should get better, and it needs to get better.
Well, I think that's enough chat from us. Let's talk to our special.
Well, before we get too deep into the game, let's take a look down to Dowell Loggins' Zoom press conference that took place a couple moments ago.
Disappointed in how we played and the result of the game. Can't turn the ball over 3 times inside the 6-yard line and expect to win. And disappointed with that. And we have a bye week to get that fixed. There are a lot of good things, the effort that we played with, but too many things were defensively allowed too many explosive passes, offensively turned the ball over. We have to become a better team on all 3 phases. Really happy with our special teams, the way they're executing, but just got to clean up things on both sides of the ball to get this part of it right. We have a bye week to do that, so we're looking forward to getting back to work tomorrow.
Thank you, Coach. We'll open up now for questions. Again, for our media, please use the raise hand function and we'll call on you. Our first questions come from Adam Miller.
Morning, Coach. You kind of alluded to obviously the 3 turnovers there in the red zone, which are unfortunate inside the 6-yard line. But you guys did a really good job of moving the ball in the longer fields. You guys had 27 first downs in the game. You got those through the air and on the ground. What do you feel really changed with the shortened field? Like in some of those situations, is it just an execution thing, or was the defense doing some things differently that made it a little more challenging with that shorter field?
No, Adam, it's a really good question. I am happy because statistically we're doing some really good stuff on offense. And even I think we're 12th in the country in yards per game, and we're moving the football between the 20s. It wasn't to me. It was like you go back and you look at the first interception. So we get the ball down there. We have a 1st and 10, and it's an awful snap. The center rolls the ball back there. And then AJ just needs to get that thing and throw it away. And it was an RPO. So at that point, you got to make a better decision. You can't let one mistake, someone else's mistake become yours. So if you're the quarterback and you don't feel like you can get the ball handed to the back at that point, just throw it out of the back of the end zone. It's going to be 2nd and 6 or second 6 from the 6-yard line. Like, we like our chances there. That one was unfortunate because that was on us. We could, as a quarterback, we talk about all the time, you can always correct other people's mistake. Like, you have the pin last. And then the second one ended up in a pick 6, which is, it was a disappointing play. I don't know if it was a catch, if it was incomplete. They ruled it a pick 6. And, if we throw a good ball right there, Dominion walks into the end zone untouched, and we bled the ball up the field. And Dominion tried to had great effort, and the ball gets kicked up. Did it hit the ground? Did not? I don't know. They said there wasn't enough evidence to overturn. disappointed in how we played and the result of the game. Can't turn the ball over 3 times inside the 6 yard line and expect to win. And disappointed with that. And we have a bye week to get that fixed. There were a lot of good things, the effort that we played with, but too many things were defensively allowed too many explosive passes, offensively turned the ball over. We have to become a better team on all 3 phases. Really happy with our special teams, the way they're executing, but just got to clean up things on both sides of the ball to get this part of it right. We have a bye week to do that, so we're looking forward to getting back to work tomorrow.
Thank you, Coach. We'll open up now for questions. Again, for our media, please use the raise hand function and we'll call on you. Our first questions come from Adam Miller.
Morning, Coach. You kind of alluded to obviously the 3 turnovers there in the red zone, which are unfortunate inside the 6 yard line. But you guys did a really, I thought, a really good job of moving the ball in the longer fields. You guys had 27 first downs in the game. You got those through the air and on the ground. What do you feel really changed with the shortened field? Like in some of those situations, is it just an execution thing, or was the defense doing some things differently that made it a little more challenging with that shorter field?
No, Adam, it's a really good question. I am happy because statistically, we're doing some really good stuff on offense. And even I think we're 12th in the country in yards per game, and we're moving the football between the 20s. It wasn't to me. It was like you go back and you look at the first interception. So we get the ball down there. We have a 1st and 10, and it's an awful snap. I mean, the center rolls the ball back there, and then AJ just needs to get that thing and throw it away. And it was an RPO. So at that point, you got to make a better decision. You can't let someone else's mistake become yours. So if you're the quarterback and you don't feel like you can get the ball handed to the back at that point, just throw it out of the back of the end zone. It's going to be 2nd 6 or second 6 from the 6 yard line. Like, we like our chances there. That one was unfortunate because that was on us. As a quarterback, we talk about all the time. You can always correct other people's mistake. Like, you have the pin last. And then the second one ended up in a pick 6, which is, I mean, it was a disappointing play. I don't know if it was a catch, if it was incomplete. They ruled it a pick 6. And, if we throw a good ball right there, Dominion walks into the end zone untouched, and we bled the ball up the field. And Dominion tried to had great effort, and the ball gets kicked up. Did it hit the ground? Did not? I don't know. They said there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it. And then the third interception down there, and 2 of the 3 on 3rd down, one's on 1st down, and the tight end's got a cross face on AJ's last one. And unfortunately, he got hurt because of it, and he's got a cross face right there. And we got to be smart with the ball, because if you take away a pick 6 and you just add 3 field goals, you're sitting there and you're probably 3-0 right now. And that's how fine line this thing is, because you get in the red zone 3 times, you move the ball the way we did. Just unfortunate, and we got to be better at the quarterback position, and we got to understand that we always have the pin last and don't allow others' mistakes to become ours.
Let's go over to Billy.
Hey, Coach. I just was curious, Jaden Barnes obviously had a come out standout performance. What have you kind of seen from that wide receiver room, and how have you seen them kind of develop so far this year?
Yeah, Billy, great question. I think AJ's had 3 good games in a row. He had the one, obviously, unfortunate play against Charlotte, but responded the right way. And he's been getting better and better each week. He's learning how to practice. He understands what this slot position entails in this offense now. And he's working really hard, and he's having success. So it's easy to work hard when you're having success. That's the one thing that's got probably still a good vibe in our building right now. Is there's a lot of players having individual success. There's a lot of yardage on offense. There's good things that happening on defense. We just got to be the team that stops hurting themselves. And so Jaden's had a lot of success right now, and he's fired up and excited, and I think he's really enjoying it here, and he's really enjoying his role in the offense, which he should, because the ball is going to him a lot, because he's doing a good job getting open.
Any final questions for Coach? Ella, go ahead with your question.
Hey, Coach. Ella Snap, Appalachian Weekly News. Yes, it is a loss, but what are some positives you and the team took out of this game?
Yeah, Ella. Positives were, I thought we played really well on special teams. I do think we moved the ball between the 20s very well offensively. The net, so we got banged up a little bit, which we're gonna have to heal through that. So the bye's come at the right time. So there are positives in a loss. Like, it's just hard to acknowledge them, and as a coach, you never acknowledge them. But there are some individuals playing really well. Isaiah Cummings is playing really well. I mean, you look at, I think 3 out of the top 7 guys in our conference receiving wise are on our roster. AJ's statistically very good in the passing game. We got to eliminate the turnovers. DeBinion's having a really big year to this point through 3 games. So there's a lot of good things going on our team. And we just got to concentrate on don't beat yourselves and play good, clean football, and we're going to be okay.
Ella, go ahead with your follow-up.
And then my second question, you have 2 weeks to figure a lot of things out. And I think what some people want to know is, how AJ Swan is doing and what this quarterback situation is going to look like over the next couple of weeks going into Boise State.
Yeah, it's a great question, Ella. And AJ's currently getting an MRI right now. He did get hurt. That's why he did not finish the game. Like I said, but you take away 3 plays, and I was really excited about the way he was playing. And, but we got to figure out this week. We won't practice today. We have practice. We'll go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll have more information on him later this afternoon after his MRI. And then, obviously we went to Noah because he'd had the best camp. And then we felt like it was the best. JJ was not, after going through warm-up stuff, he was not going to be ready to play from an injury as well. And then at the end of the game, we decided to get Billy in, and Billy had a 10-play drive and got us in the end zone and did a nice job for us. And him and Noah are both captains. They're both from Mississippi, and Billy was obviously at Southern Miss before. So happy with the way he came in and played. A really hard situation to put Noah in, to go in as a freshman. But he earned the right to, because he had the best camp between him and Billy.
Thanks, Coach Loggins. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Welcome back to the studio. Some solid points from Coach Loggins. But now let's go ahead and take it down to the football field. Ella Snap is at Kid Brewer Stadium.
Thanks, guys. So obviously things look a little bit different today. We are out on the football field instead of in this building right here where the press conferences are normally held. We did not have an in-person press conference with the reporters and coach, but we were able to hop onto a virtual press conference where we still got to ask coach some questions. So overall, during that press conference, he was talking about how honestly they just beat themselves and there were a lot of things to clean up on. And in that press conference where he was talking about that, he also did hit on there were some good things. I asked him, what were the positives of this game? What are the good things that came out of this game? And he highlighted some players, Isaiah Cummings, Rashad DeBinion, Jaden Barnes, AJ Swan. He said that they did play a good game, and technically, statistically, this team still played really good, but we did end up beating ourselves when it came to those interceptions in the red zone. He said AJ Swan does need to clean up on those things, but otherwise he was proud of how he played. Updates on AJ Swan. He's getting an MRI today, and we will have more updates later today on how he's doing and if he will be able to return or not. Hopefully, Coach, over these next couple of weeks, said he has a lot to think about and a lot to plan and discuss on who's going to be starting. He thought Noah did a great job jumping in there, and ultimately, the reason Noah was brought into the game over Billy Wiles was because Noah did outbeat him in that quarterback room, did look better during those practices. But Billy Wiles did come in, throw 5 for 5, and also had a great performance. There were some good players. Special teams did really great. And, looking at this quarterback room, it looks like depending on what happens with AJ Swan, either AJ will be able to come back in 2 weeks, or maybe we'll see Billy Wiles, JJ Cole, we'll see Noah Gillen again. We are going to toss back to you guys and see what you think about this quarterback situation after this press conference.
Well, thank you very much, Ella. That was definitely very interesting to hear about the quarterbacks. And Trey, we'll jump into the quarterbacks in a second, but I want to hear your initial thoughts of the press conference.
Well, Bobby, the most important thing that I think Loggins said was that the bye week is going to be the most important thing. 2 weeks in a row, we're kind of playing down to opponents, maybe more so, in fact, than Lindenwood last week. This is a really good Southern Miss team. They showed that on Saturday, but that bye week has got to be super beneficial. Loggins said they're not going to practice today. They're going to practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then head. They're going to practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then, they're going to be ready come Boise State in 2 weeks.
Ella mentioned the bright spots for this team. What would you say the bright spots were for this App State team?
Well, it's definitely Jaden Barnes. He has solidified himself as that number 1 receiver. 10 receptions this past week. Him and AJ, have, really started that connection. But, when Billy and Noah are in there, he was still making plays. The receiving core as a whole, we got a shout out from Isaiah Cummings out there too, But there's really 3 receivers. At least personally, I thought I'd see more William Fowles this year, but Stroman, Barnes, and Cummings have really solidified themselves as those top 3, and then Barnes, top 3 in the country in receiving yards. So really set himself out there.
And one of the biggest questions for this team going into the future will be the quarterback situation. As we heard in the press conference, still yet to hear the full lengths of the injury for A.J. Swan, so unsure if he will be available for Boise. I want to hear your perspective on the quarterback room, Trey, especially after seeing a true freshman play and then eventually Billy Wiles.
Well, Noah Gillen wasn't ready. I mean, that's just the fact. He did not look ready. I mean, a lot of those yards came from screen passes to Barnes or plays off the catch from Barnes. I think Billy Wiles has to be the 3rd string. We didn't see J.J. Cole at all, and that's really important. He's another power forward transfer, huge quarterback. He's a barrel back there, and he can get the ball down the field. But I think Billy Wiles has to be that number 2 if J.J. isn't ready, and then he's got to be that number 1 if A.J. is not ready as well.
So Rashad Dubinion, another heavy load offensively, 24 carries in Saturday's game. So would you say that it would be a good idea to get other running backs in the room, or do you think Rashad Dubinion should stay that primary back?
Oh, definitely. I think Jakari Lewis had a really good game, in the backfield as a receiver. We haven't seen Kamani Alexander yet either. This is a guy who was in the mix last year in the previous regime under Coach Clark, and we got to see we got to see guys come in more. Dubinion's great. I mean, we've talked about this 3 weeks in a row. He's been absolutely killing it, but is he the bell cow? Can he rush 25 times a game? when we get into November, is that going to come back and hurt? What happens when he pulls a hamstring and then Jakari Lewis and Kamani Alexander are kind of looking at each other like, what do we do? And then someone's got to help him. And I think that could be Jakari Lewis, but I think we got to see other backs get in there as well.
And last week during the press conference, we saw Dowell Loggins talk about wanting to limit those touches for Dubinion. Why do you think we still saw such a high volume from him?
Because he was good. I mean, he runs hard. The offensive line kind of struggled a little bit when it came to protecting the quarterback, but Dubinion still made do with what he could. And, he's a really good back. He could start anywhere in the country today, top to bottom. And, we're just blessed that he's here in Kid Brewer Stadium and, putting on that black and gold every week. But, he's a beast. He's a dog. And we're seeing that. And, we're going to see that at Boise State. Is it going to be beneficial? Is he going to get 30 touches? You hope not. But if he needs it, and that's the way the game plan's going, Coach knows best. But, back to Jacob's point, we need to see more running backs, 100%.
Well, thank you so much, Trey. We're going to send it right back down to Kid Brewer Stadium. Ella Snap, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so after watching the game myself, there were definitely a few things I noticed from the coaches, from the team, from the environment that really said how the game went. So first of all, I do think the team beat itself. I agree with what Coach Loggins said. Everyone was playing really good. I think statistically we had the ball 40 minutes of the game. We had more yards, but we were really just beating ourselves with that interception where they got a touchdown and with other fumbles and interceptions in the red zone. I think that Rashad Dubinion was a key component to this game. He is still a very critical and very strong player. It was just that one unfortunate mistake that I think put us behind that touchdown, which really hurt us. And then also, Jaden Barnes, I think he really stood out this game and really took place as a wide receiver 1 on this team. He really made a name for himself. He got 10 receptions, which is matching Caden Robinson for double-digit receptions back in 2023. So I think he really made a name for himself and made a place for himself on this team and really proved to us this game where he belongs and how he belongs on this team. And then I do think there are still a lot of mistakes to fix. There are, some drop passes. I think A.J. Swan needs to get more accurate on those throws and make sure that they're really going to the right place. And I think if we fix those things, then obviously the team will be able to perform a lot better. And Rashad Dubinion, he was very accountable of his mistake. He tweeted, "We will be better." And I think that shows his accountability for himself and his accountability for the team. And I think the rest of the team is really able to hold themselves to that standard as well and keep doing that going into the future where they have these 2 weeks to really practice and focus on those little mistakes so that they can get better. And coach, during the game, I believe that while he's coaching, he's able to keep such a level head on the sidelines. And I think that's because he is looking to the next thing. He's not letting what just happened impact his feelings or his emotions. So he is just looking forward to that next play. He always says the next game is the most important, and I think that's his coaching on the field as well. The next play is the most important. What happened doesn't matter. What matters is that we need to get back on top of it and we need to fix it. And I really think that's the mentality he has now, maybe with not having that live press conference that we're usually having. He really just wants to look to this next game. The next game is the most important, and that's what we're looking forward to. And hopefully in these next 2 weeks, we will be able to see some changes on the team and what we expect from App State at Boise State.
Well, thank you very much, Ella. Great analysis as always. And Trey, she was talking a little bit about the turnover situation. What do you think Coach Dal Loggins and the rest of the team can do to help limit those turnovers?
It's got to start. It seems like jitters in the red zone. 3 red zone interceptions within the Southern Miss 10. You're in goal-to-go situations. And AJ Swan, he's from LSU, he's from Vanderbilt, but he never really got those game reps. Maybe it's jitters, maybe it's miscommunication. We saw Rashad Dubinion in that, really weird play, that really whole just odd situation. Was it incomplete? Was it not? We don't know. That's for the referees and other people to talk about. But it just seems like jitters. You gotta get these boys ready. You gotta get them ready to go.
And App State had almost 40 minutes of possession with the ball. Why do you think it is that App State was not able to come out with the win?
It's those turnovers. It's those turnovers. 4 of our first 5 drives, we go for 277 yards in those 5 drives, but you only put 1 touchdown on the board. You got to finish. Finishing is the key. Putting points on the board is the key. You can't go into Sun Belt Conference play and throw 3 red zone interceptions and have that many yards to start and not put any points on the board. You have nothing to show for it. It's got to start at AJ Swan. It's got to start at Noah Gillen, Billy Wiles, JJ Cole, maybe whoever's there. They're the leader on this field. They are the captain in presence. They have to show. And Ella made a great point. AJ Swan has to be more accurate. There was an RPO, threw it, intercepted. He's just got to be more accurate. He's got to get his head in the game.
And you talk a little bit about Sun Belt play, and we're still 3 weeks out from the next conference matchup for App State. However, I want to hear your perspective on what does this game show for App State going into Sun Belt play?
It's a little concerning. It's obviously concerning, but again, this is a really good Southern Miss team. They have the Charles Huff, who was the Marshall coach. They have a lot of those Marshall guys that won the championship last year. They absolutely destroyed Sun Belt Conference play last year. So, as we move into Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, Old Dominion, I think we'll see this team gel together more, but guys, Rome wasn't built in a day. This is a whole new team, a whole new coaching staff. These guys have been together for a couple months, but they've only been on the field for 3 weeks. So I think we got to give them some time. I think it will get there when we see Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, and Old Dominion. I think that Oregon State game, we talking about conference play, but out of conference play, Boise State, Oregon State, these are future Pac-12 teams. Oregon State is a former Power 5 team. That game is really telling. It's a week before that Georgia State game. It's super telling on where we're going to be going into conference play.
So you talk a little bit about the schedule coming up, Boise State, Oregon State, then we're into conference play. Of the upcoming games, maybe in the next 5 or so weeks, which of those would you say is the most important for App State to win?
Well, it's what Logan says. Next game is most important. It's Ellen. Next play is most important. But I think looking past Boise State, it's Oregon State. I just said it. It's that week before conference play. You got a former Texas and Duke quarterback in Malik Murphy. That defense has got to be ready. They kind of struggled with the Southern Miss quarterback. They kind of struggled with the Lindenwood quarterback, to be honest. And I think that game is the tell for how this season is going to go. We're at Boise State. That's a raucous crowd. The blue turf. They're going to be ready. We've got some uniform stuff going on. They're already ready for that game. So that Oregon State game is going to be super tough. They've kind of had a struggle to start this year, but App State has too. So that game looking forward, offense has to be better. You can't have 3 turnovers like what we've been talking about. It's the same thing that we talked about when you and me were up here last week with Lindenwood, Jacob. 2 fumbles. That should have been a 42-13 game. This Southern Miss game could have been a 42-38 game. Even more, Dom DeFreitas missed a kick. the team's got to get their head back into it. Just period. And I think it starts with that Oregon State game.
And I know we're talking about a lot of negatives from this game, and rightfully so. There were a lot of things to focus on. However, I want to get your perspective, Trey, or maybe some positives either from this past game or from the first 3 games overall that App State should try and take going into the upcoming matchups.
Well, we talk about Jaden Barnes all the time, but I think Colton Ferris did a really good job on the defense. This was a guy who came in as a safety, played a little bit of safety last year, then moved to linebacker, and, Thomas Davis went out. We lose that vocal leader. We lose that on-field presence, and Colton Ferris really stepped up. He's leading the team in tackles on the season. He led the team in tackles on Saturday, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing from him these past 3 games.
So in Saturday's game, Thomas Davis goes down, unsure of what's going to happen with him going into Boise State. But when you look at Boise State, that is a huge game for the Mountaineers. Who is going to step up defensively, not only as that player, but also as a leader for the Mountaineers?
I just mentioned Colton Ferris, but I think it's also Kevin Abrams-Verwain, on that defensive line. Thomas Davis is kind of that linebacker on the line, kind of plays back, front, but Kevin Verwain Abrams on that front defensive line, shutting down the Boise State quarterback, shutting down, everything that's going around. He caused havoc in that Charlotte game. He caused havoc in the Lindenwood game. I'd like to see him be a lot more into the game than he was on Saturday. If Thomas Davis is out, this is I don't think it's concerning, but who's going to step up and be that vocal leader? We've seen Thomas Davis in press conferences being like, I got to lead my guys. I'm the guy out there doing this. Who's going to step up and be it? I think it has to be Abrams-Verwain.
And then going into Boise, what do you want to see out of the play style for App State?
I want to see us throw the ball more. We threw the ball a lot with A.J. Swan, and we've ran a lot with Dubinion, and Dubinion has been killing it. I mean, we see the stats. Like back to your point, the usage rate's kind of concerning, but I think Jaden Barnes is our most important player. Hands down. That A.J. Swan to Jaden Barnes connection, we saw it last year with Aguilar and Robinson, how important that was and how beneficial it was to winning games. I think it could be similar, if not better, going over with the new offense and everything and some new scheme stuff. So I think we have to throw the ball more, and we have to instill that confidence in A.J. Swan. He could be kind of down on himself, but A.J. Swan, Jaden Barnes, definitely the ones to look for.
Well, thank you very much, Trey. And this has been AWN's live coverage of the App State football press conference. I'm Bobby Phillips.
And I'm Jacob Pearsall. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for Monday's press conference here on AWN's channel.